Welcome, everyone. I now call today's meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to order. We would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation, and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters. Has committee members had an opportunity to review minutes of the last meeting?
Yes.
Are there any changes necessary?
Not for me.
May I have a mover then for the minutes? David, seconder, Cam. All in favor? That motion is carried. The purpose of this meeting is to review applications for minor variances as they apply to lands within the municipality of Meaford. Let me first start by introducing the members of this committee. On my far left, Mr. David Cramp. On my far right, Mr. Ed Ormsby, Mr. Cam Hall, who's the vice chair, and I am Terry Williams, chair of this committee. The municipal planning staff in attendance today are Denise McCarl, manager of planning services, Helena Fascinato, planner, and Jamie Urim, permit administrator and secretary treasurer of this committee. This committee is legally required to make decisions that conform to the Provincial Planning Act, as well as the existing county and local official plans. Based on those documents, as well as any additional relevant correspondence, the municipal planning staff have prepared a detailed report and provided this committee with their recommendations. The community is encouraged to share their thoughts about these proposed applications. For those who may be joining us remotely via Zoom or are here in person, you will have the opportunity to speak should you wish to do so. I will call upon you at the appropriate time. It's also appropriate to ask any questions you may have as it relates to these applications. Your constructive comments to this committee will help us to make informed decisions on these applications. The applicant and their representatives will also have the opportunity to respond to any comments or questions that have been raised, either by this committee or by members of the public. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the decisions of any application being heard today may do so by calling 519-538-1060 extension 1120, or through an email request to planning@meaford.ca. Before I open the public session, I must ask the committee members if they have any direct, personal, pecuniary, or general interest thereof related to these files today.
No.
Seeing none. I have taken the liberty, because I know most of you are here, to speak to the SkyDev application. So I'm going to go off script and I'm going to do the other application first, just so that they do not have to sit through the entire meeting should they choose not to. So the meeting of the Committee of Adjustment will now consider an application for a minor variance under Section 45 of the Planning Act for the lands at 17 Henry Street East in the municipality of Meaford. The requirement to hold this meeting must have been 10 days notice as prescribed in the Planning Act. Jamie, can you please confirm to me the date the notice was published and calculate that we've had at least 10 days notice?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The notice was provided on February 5th, 2026, giving more than the required 10 days notice.
Thank you. Helena, as the planner on this file, can you please summarize the application? Provide us with any comments that have been received.
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Chair.
So the applicant is looking to build a detached additional residential unit, shown on the screen, or an ARU on the rear, at the rear of the property at 170 Henry Street. So the purpose of the ARU is for the owners to have a place to reside in and store their belongings while they reconstruct the existing home on the property. During the pre-consultation, it was recognized that due to the existing location of the house, there was no location on the lot that would facilitate the required parking space for the ARU. Therefore, the owners request a variance to reduce the minimum width of a driveway from 3 meters to 2.25 meters to allow a driveway to extend into the backyard to the parking space. For the ARU, the owners are also requesting a variance to the height of an ARU from 5.5 meters to 6.15 meters. So it's an increase of 0.65 meters to allow for a more comfortable ceiling height and usable garage space. Staff have reviewed the requested variances against the provincial planning statement and the 4 tests of a minor variance and recommend approval of this application. We've received comments from County Planning, Grey Sauble Conservation, and the Historic Saugeen Métis, who all note no concerns. A public comment was also received from a neighbor with questions about the zoning of the property and if there was going to be a workshop in the proposed ARU. Staff responded to this comment with zoning information and noted a commercial workshop is not included in the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, have you had an opportunity to visit the site and or review the file? Do you have any questions as it relates to this file? No. Is the applicant here? Would you care to make any statements relative to this file?
No, I don't.
Hello,
Can you please identify yourself for the record?
my name is Simon Retty. So yeah, I'm the owner of the property.
Thank you. I have a few questions.
Sure.
Can you tell me why you're looking for an additional 2 feet, essentially what it amounts to?
So-
On the height?
Yeah, in order to get now I'm not a builder, so I'm just going by what the architect has told me. So to get the clear span on the garage level, they require, I believe it's 12-inch trusses, floor system on the lower level, which then would only allow, say, 7 feet of clearance on the top level. So we're trying to have, I believe, 9 feet on the garage level and 8 feet on the upper level.
Okay, thank you. I had asked actually for a better sketch primarily of the lot. When I reviewed the application, there was some concern that stated neighboring buildings might be actually over the lot line. Was there no survey done when you purchased the property?
Yeah, we had, I think I sent that to Helena. Yeah, I think she has that now. So yeah, we had an engineer do an engineered survey. The house on as you're looking at the lot, the house on the left is very close to the property line, but it's not over or on the property line, if that's what you're asking.
No, I'm asking there was some detached buildings at 168 Henry. And they said that they may be
Not to
over the
my,
property line.
not to my knowledge. No, I don't think so.
My last question is when you tear down the existing property,
Yes.
will it allow you to put a driveway in that meets the minimum standards of 3 meters?
Yeah, so this is actually a temporary measure.
I understand that.
Yeah, so when the existing home gets taken down for us to build our primary residence, we're gonna have ample parking at the front. Right now, the existing house, because of course it was built, 100 years ago, is very close to your municipal property line. So there wasn't ample space to put a parking spot right now, a temporary parking spot at the front of the property. So we have to, in accordance to the bylaw, we have to have parking for that ADU. So the only place we could put it was at the back. temporarily, and therefore we need a narrower driveway.
Thank you. Committee members, any other questions, comments?
No.
No, thank you. Then, Jamie, are there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this matter? Anybody? Zoom? No, for this one. Then,
I got scared when I got here. It's like my little building.
Jamie, can you please provide us with a suggested decision and conditions of this file?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment approve minor variance A02 2026 for the lands at 170 Henry Street, providing a relief from zoning bylaw 60-2009 to permit the following. A maximum height of 6.15 meters for the dwelling, where section 4.2.1.2E of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum height of 5.5 meters. B, to permit a driveway to be 2.25 meters in width, where section 5.2 of the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 3.0 meters in width. Subject to the following conditions. 1, that the proposed development shall occur substantially in accordance with the site plan provided with minor variance application A0-2026 and attached to this report as Appendix 1.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, committee members? No. Then may I have a mover for this? Cam and a seconder? David, all in favor? That motion is carried. Jamie, can you please outline next steps for the applicant?
The applicant can now take down the sign on the property and I will provide the notice of decision to them by email.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
This just takes us a minute as we need to formally sign the decision. Thank you. We will now consider an application for a minor variance under section 45 of the Planning Act for the lands at 226 Boucher Street East in the municipality of Meaford. The requirement to hold this meeting that there must have been at least 10 days notice as prescribed in the Planning Act. Jamie, can you please confirm the date the notice was published and again calculate that there's been at least 10 days?
Through you, Mr. Chair, notice was provided on February 5th, 2026, giving more than the required 10 days notice.
Thank you. Elena, again, as the planner, can you please summarize the application and provide us with comments that have been received?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this minor variance application is for an increase in height from 12 meters or 4 stories to 15 meters or 5 stories for each of the 3 proposed apartment buildings within the Skydev development. I just wanted to highlight that this variance applies to an increase in height for the 3 buildings. The sightline is to remain the same, but the applicant is proposing to excavate and expose a portion of the previously underground story, which will, if approved, become the first story of habitable space. Understanding that the site-specific zoning was completed through the OLT process, the applicant has provided a legal opinion on whether a minor variance application is appropriate for this proposal, which was reviewed by the municipal legal team who concurred with this legal opinion. As addressed in the staff recommendation report, staff have reviewed the requested variances against the provincial planning statement and the 4 tests of a minor variance and recommend approval of the application subject to conditions. Just as a point of clarification, Section D5 of the official plan permits a maximum height for buildings within the urban area to be 15.5 meters. If a proposed building is higher than 15.5 meters, then a zoning bylaw amendment would be required. The proposed variance is less than 15.5 meters. Staff, do you recognize the causal impact of removing the underground parking to accommodate the additional rental units? And as part of an ongoing site plan review, staff must look at the updated site plan submission for conformity with Special Policy Area 1 and consider reducing parking areas, increasing green space, which may include a mix of vegetation, including mature tree planting, looking at snow storage, draining, etc. This variance application that the committee is considering today applies solely to the requested increase in height. And if the proposed height of 15 meters as requested meets the 4 tests. To ensure that the other components of this development, including parking and green space, are addressed, staff have included a condition of minor variance approval, which states that the minor variance will not come into effect until final site plan approval is granted, as site plan control is the appropriate planning process to address the overall site design. And we've received comments from County Planning, Grace Sabel, and the Historic Sagi Métis, who noted no concerns. We received quite a few public comments, which have been shared with committee members and with the applicant. To summarize, the main concerns were the increased parking area on site, traffic, safety, lack of green space, noise, and that the variant doesn't meet the 4 tests. Thank you.
This development has been through several variations, so I have asked the planning staff if they would just present a brief history so that everyone is on the same page, that they're aware. So Denise, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going to pull up that part of the report. I also have some additional notes on that in front of me. So the original zoning bylaw application was submitted March 2021. And that zoning bylaw application was subject to 2 public meetings. So the original request was for a 5-story hotel for approximately 90 units with a spa, 3 2-story street-facing townhouse buildings with 14 units, 3 5-story waterfront townhouse buildings with 72 units, 2 5-story apartment buildings with 120 units, and a mixture of underground and surface parking areas. The total residential units at that time was 206. So probably lots of people in the gallery today will remember that original application. Over time, this proposal was revised and a few of the buildings were eliminated. As part of the OLT process, the final count ended up being 196 residential units, which was very similar to just before the appeal was received. So just to back up a little bit, the decision was made by the Ontario Land Tribunal because the applicant did appeal the non-decision within the required timeframe. So there's 90 days to approve a zoning bylaw amendment. And if you don't, they can appeal that non-movement of their file. So going through that process, what was approved was a 5-story hotel of up to 78 units with the spa, 21 2-story, 3 blocks of 2-story street-facing townhomes. And I know lots of comments have mentioned the townhomes, up to 21 units, 4 4-story waterfront townhouse buildings with 88 units, and a 4-story apartment building with 60 units. And it had a mixture of underground and surface parking with that total, as I said, of 169 units. Once that had been approved through the OLT process, and then the applicant moved into site plan approval, which, just for everyone's understanding, is when they get into the very specifics of the pipes, the concrete, how it's being serviced, grading and drainage, and all of those engineering related matters. As in addition to things like landscaping, street furniture, walkways, lighting, and all of that. And we have standards they have to meet as they go through that process. That application was received in October 2023 and was going through quite a few renditions of design revisions and things. It was conditionally approved September 2024. And when that application came in, it didn't have the street facing townhomes anymore. It had landscaping and a berm along the two frontages, so on Boucher and Fuller Streets. And the main outstanding conditions included things like water main extensions and those sorts of things, and dealing with some of the matters related to the hotel. In 2024, May, we removed the holding symbol, and the reason that holding symbol was placed, it's a zoning tool, and that was placed to not allow them to build anything until they had gotten a commitment for a hotel to be on the one portion of the property. So the applicant, Skydev, was able to secure a purchaser for those lands, which is a hotelier. We removed the holding symbol at that time. At the same, just in that same sort of time period, there was a consent to sever the hotel off. So once that purchaser was secured, they severed off the hotel lands to sell to the hotel owner. And that was approved in September 2024 with conditions. And one of the conditions was making sure we had the site plan wrapped up to a point that the hotel and the residential portion were determined who was responsible for what in the site servicing component. And I don't think I've noted on here about the master development agreement, like the full dates of it, but in 2025, the applicant and the hotel entered into a master development agreement to ensure those offsite works would be completed, because that's one of the main reasons we need those sorts of agreements to happen before we move forward. And there were a few things outstanding at that time, but they were all engineering related. They weren't any other types of issues. After we got through some of that engineering review and kind of determined what needed to happen with those offsite works, around that time, they did let us know the applicant wanted to resubmit and change the design somewhat. And they did a presentation to council in November of 2025, letting them know what their plans were. At that time, they let us know they wanted to change to surface parking, and they wanted to convert to a rental component versus the condominium, and also change the definition of how height would be considered in this case, because before, with the terraces and with the way that the grading would be, the first floor would actually be parking and inside the structure. And so now it would be exposed and become units. So that's where the height change would be considered. It's how we define height. We define it based on the grade around the property, not an elevation point. And they let council know what their plans were and provided some drawings. And that presentation is on the website. So a lot of people have seen it and we're able to take a look at that. The minor variance was received prior to, at least an application prior to the presentation to council. We were waiting to get a few more details. We wanted a resubmission on the site plan. We wanted to have legal opinion about the validity of doing a variance. That doesn't mean that the legal opinion says a variance is a good idea or that a variance should be approved. It just means they have the legal right to do the variance, to apply, and that it would meet the requirements legally under the obligations, under the OLT decision, et cetera, so that there was no reason why they couldn't apply for the variance. But we needed to get that as part of the submission. So we were able to get that. And then we moved forward to the public meeting that you have today.
Thank you. Members of the committee, do we have any questions for the planning staff?
Mr. Chair, through you, help me understand here. If the minor variance is approved, then I assume that the additional parking spaces are not really going to be, there's not going to be any further discussion of that area other than under the plan, the site plan, where you may do some minor adjustments. But in fact, the fact that we're going to be putting out, what, 135, 136 new parking spots, that's more or less almost tacitly approved if the minor variance is approved. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this minor variance applies solely to the height. So going from 12 meters to 15 meters. But we, as noted, there is a causal impact of that and it is additional parking. But through our site plan control process is where we can reduce those parking spaces. So one of the conditions of minor variance approval is that final site plan approval is granted. And that's our tool where we look at parking, we look at adding green space, making sure it complies with our policies.
One last question, if I may. So when I take a look at the building variance, pretty straightforward. The only reason we're really all concerned is because of the causal impact. And so we look at that and we have to then go back to the plan and we say, that, you know, from a parking and from a streetscape point of view, obviously the staff feels it does fall within, it's not it falls within minor variance. Is that correct?
I'm getting a look from Helena, so I'll answer it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Yes, so that doesn't, I mean, this committee is looking at the issue of minor and desirability and the official plan and zoning as well. So it's not just whether you like the height, it's whether or not you think it meets the 4 tests. One of the questions we asked ourselves is, could they just change to surface parking without the variance? And they absolutely could do that. And there would be no variance here if they just wanted to do 12 meters and then just say, we can't do the surface, we're not going to do the underground parking anymore, and we wouldn't be coming in front of you. So I think that's where we're trying to separate these two things a little bit and determine whether or not the variance itself is directly related to surface parking or whether it's somewhat related or how much related it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, from committee members?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I reiterate what Mr. Hall had to say. I want to thank you, Denise, first of all, for explaining that and put it in a layman's term. But I do have a hard time with saying yes to a variance when we know that it's going to impact it in other ways. And I guess we have, what's the answer there? You're basically saying if we approve the variance, then the planning department will decide parking spots, green space, and everything after that. Am I getting that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the height increase is what we are looking at when we did our 4 tests review. And as Denise said, parking could be, they could stick with the height and put more parking. So the tool that we can use is site plan control to when we look at the site design. And that's why one of the conditions of approval would be site plan approval. So when we did our 4 tests of this height variance, we found that it met those.
Thank you.
Any other questions, committee members? I have a few. In the presentation to council in November of 2025, did they have any discussions or comments related to the height variance at that time?
They did not, Mr. Chair.
So pursuant to bylaw 2022-84, it says council may authorize increases in height and that would be permitted in return for various provisions. Were there any discussions relative to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that section refers to a portion of the Planning Act known as Section 37, Community Benefits. And the municipality of Meaford has not actioned community benefits. So in the old, previous to 2020, it was called bonus zoning. And so in that bonusing, people who remember those terms from back then would remember it's kind of like you buy the ability to have an increased density or height, and you would give either a cash payment or you would give a community benefit. And in the city, those could be things like a recreation facility, a bus lay-by, something like that, that would benefit everyone for that additional density or height. When that was replaced, and even then you had to have official plan policies and sort of a program around that. When it was replaced after 2020, we left that in there that you could actualize that, but we don't actually have a community benefits program. So we don't have any ability to kind of, and that would only apply to a 5th story because we don't allow at this point 6th or 7th or 8th stories. It would only run to 5th story. But the applicant did at that time when this was approved, contribute a cash payment that was above and beyond the normal parkland dedication that is part of the site plan agreement process. And that was to contribute to the harbor master plan, sort of some of those features like things like walking trails and landscaping, things like that, that are offsite. And the determination of what we're going to do with that money hasn't been made yet.
Okay, thank you. Relative to parking, when I looked at site plan 03/2023, there was 153 units proposed with 232 parking spaces, most of which were underground. That amounted to approximately 1.5 parking spaces per unit. The revised one is now 183 units with 242 parking spaces, which is a decrease now to 1.32 parking spaces per unit. My question is it realistic to think that the planning department, when they went through site approval, would say you have to reduce the parking even more? Because what I'm concerned about now is that with these number of units, everybody's going to be parking on the street. And then we're going to have traffic issues, and it's going to be even worse in the wintertime when there's no street parking. So I just, I couldn't help but bring that up at this time. Thank you. Yeah. When you did the traffic study that you referred to, was that a municipality study or was that done by the developer? Because I know there's 2 or 3 different ones, and I tried to look for that study in the archive on meaford.ca and I couldn't find that. Was it a municipality study?
So, Mr. Chair, no, all of the studies that an applicant is required to do, they own. And so they would have their traffic engineer complete. And then the municipality would have the municipal traffic engineer peer review and determine if it's appropriate.
Did it consider the impact of potential future development on the vacant site south of Skydev?
So,
which I mean,
yeah,
relatively, I know it's minimal, but by the same token, we're supposed to be looking forward. So that's one of the concerns I would have, that if the traffic study already makes it difficult.
So, Mr. Chair, for the most part, most of these traffic studies determine whether or not the roads are wide enough. Do they need turning lanes? Do the intersections with signals like at the 2 different signalized intersections accommodate the traffic? They look at the really big picture, and it wouldn't have considered future development at that time. Every development is kind of considered at the time when they're there. So we wouldn't say, okay, you're too overbuilt because the guy beside you might want to build something. It just can't work like that because that site may never develop or it might develop in a year. At the time when that site comes forward, they will also have to deal with traffic impacts, and they will have to do their own traffic study and determine how much parking they need. Because we really don't know what level of development it might be.
And that would include consideration of street parking. Did the traffic study?
So, Mr. Chair, I don't believe that, I'm not a traffic engineer. So, and I don't pretend that I'm an expert on traffic. I read the reports and I trust our traffic engineers' review. But generally speaking, street parking is meant to be occasional use. It's not meant to be anything anyone relies on for their unit.
Thank you. One last question. Can you confirm that, one of the concerns was stormwater and water runoff from all of the parking lot? Can you please confirm that grading, drainage, and stormwater runoff concerns are dealt with during the engineering requirements of the site plan review?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so these are part of site plan approval. The previous design already was reviewed in this regard by municipal engineer, Gray Sauble Conservation, and Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is party to that site, the grading and drainage plan. So they've asked to be a reviewer on the grading and drainage plan. There were no outstanding concerns from them. And so Gray Sauble and Saugeen Ojibwe Nation were satisfied in as the last rendition. Now, we know that this new one has more surface impermeable area. And so it's a whole new review. So it will be part of it, and we haven't finished it yet. So we can't say to you, this are the results or anything like that. It's still undergoing the review.
That's good. Thank you very much. Any other questions from community members?
Mr. Chair, just through you again, question, you may not be able to answer this because it's about the proposed hotel, but I just wondered if we had any feeling as to whether the hotel was going to continue to have underground parking or if it was originally planned to be more or less a joint effort between the Skydev and the hotel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to this question. So the lands are severed. They only have certain aspects of the two properties that are shared. So they are going to share the one driveway, which is at the end of Bridge Street, and they will share some of the servicing pipes that come into the site, but they will not be sharing parking. So we don't have a sense of whether the hotel might change their underground parking to surface parking. They already have a significant amount of their site as surface parking in their current plan. We haven't had any resubmission from them or any discussions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I think one of the things this committee struggles with the most, at least I do, are minor variances as far as size goes and stuff like that. This one is very different in that the causal effects from it are huge. We've passed a number of variance applications where I struggled with the size of the variation or the variance. But because there was no causal effect, it worked out. We passed them. This one is very much different in that this is a snowball effect. It's just huge in nature. Anyway, just a comment.
Any other questions from committee members? I'd like now to open this up. Should the applicant wish to speak at this time? Kristen?
Yes.
does
Are you
Chris-
able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Kristen Barrisdale. I'm from GSP Group, and we are the planning consultants acting on behalf of SkyDev with the proposed minor variance application that's in front of you this afternoon. I do have a few slides to go through to kind of walk through some of the details of the proposed development, and then of course answer any questions or receive any comments that you may have with respect to the proposed variance. I believe that Ms. Fascinato was going to move the slides forward for me as we move through this presentation. Next slide, please. I was initially going to provide some overview of the site, but I believe that you have received that, or there has been quite a significant level of detail that's provided to you at the outset of this. As everybody in this room is aware, the site is currently vacant and was previously used for commercial purposes. It was occupied formerly by the Stanley Knight Hardware Flooring. It's my understanding that the previous business ceased to exist in 2014, with the buildings associated with that business being demolished in 2015. One thing I did want to note, you'll notice the last sentence on the slide, that there is a site grade change or slope downwards towards Georgian Bay. So it's approximately about a 3 to 4 meter grade change from the top of the site, the corner of the site that's at the corner of Butcher and Fuller, down to the waterfront. Next slide, please. Again, I won't spend too much time walking through these slides. I believe that the staff report did a really great job of providing an overview of the applicable policies, the official plan policies, and zoning that applies to the site. The site is designated as primary settlement area in the county of Gray official plan, and it's located within the urban area of the municipality of Meaford official plan. I believe that we touched on the policies associated with Special Policy Area 1 for the site, which anticipated the lands would be developed in their entirety with a mix of residential, commercial, and open space. I do note, and I believe this was touched on earlier, that the Meaford official plan does permit a maximum building height of 15.5 meters within the urban area, which is the equivalent to 5 stories. As touched on previously, the zoning bylaw was approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal in December of 2022. It did permit a hotel as an additional permitted use on the site, and it established maximum building height of 15.5 meters for the hotel and a maximum building height of 12 meters or 4 stories for the apartment building. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to take you through and walk you through some of the changes to the site plan from the initial site plan application that was submitted to the city in 2023 to what is being presented, and then what is the subject of the minor variance application today. So as noted throughout this previous discussions, the initial site plan, or the original site plan, provided for 3 4-story residential buildings situated closest to the waterfront, furthest away from the existing residential uses on Boucher and Fuller Street. It did provide for a combination of surface parking spaces as well as underground parking spaces. You can see those surface parking spaces situated immediately in front of the building. It did provide for outdoor amenity space for future residents, as well as enhanced landscape screening and landscape features along the Fuller Street and Boucher Street frontage. So what I mean by enhanced landscape and screening is that the area along those street frontages has in fact been provided at a wider or a bigger width or length than typical, to provide for the planting of mature trees, to provide for a double planting or double row of trees and vegetation. Leading up to the site plan application and as part of the zoning bylaw amendment and the OLT hearing, it was very apparent and very clear that providing for screening of the site for those residential uses on the opposite side of both Butcher and Fuller Street was a really important consideration for residents. The initial application did include 1 driveway access off of Butcher Street, which you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. That was a mid-block access point intended to serve the future residential development. And then as touched on by staff, there was also an additional driveway access on Fuller Street, which is north of Bridge Street. So you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen. And as noted, that driveway was intended to be kind of a shared access between the future residential uses and the first future commercial uses. Next slide, please. The application that you see today, or the application that is the impetus for this minor variance, has changed from the initial application in 2025. It still provides for the 3 apartment buildings closest to the waterfront, separated as much as possible from the existing residential uses. As noted, it does provide for the removal of their underground parking. The proposed development, as initially contemplated by SkyDev, was intended to be condominium in nature, but as I'm sure most of you in the room are well aware, there has been quite a shift in the housing market, some of the housing sales and housing demands. And because of that, SkyDev has shifted the tenure of this project to actually be apartment buildings. Surface parking is more suitable from an economic perspective now that these are going to be rental units. And as touched on a number of times by staff, we note that the proposed application in front of the committee today is simply to address building height. We are not looking for any changes to the parking, total number of parking spaces where they're required on site. We're not asking for any changes to the existing official plan designations or zoning bylaw amendments that would prevent surface parking as is. Even without the increase to 5 stories, SkyDev would pursue the surface parking similar to what's being proposed as part of the development. So the parking discussion, or the rate of parking is not actually being considered or not being proposed to be addressed as part of this application. As you can see on this graphic, there is still some enhanced streetscape screening and amenity space that's provided along the Butcher Street, as well as the Fuller Street frontage. Again, this is to provide for double rows of tree planting, as well as mature vegetation to provide for that enhanced screening. And there still is, I believe that there were some questions or comments that were received by residents with regards to the lack of the amenity space or the removal of amenity space on the site. The amenity space has been relocated or resituated on the site. It was previously identified at the corner of Boucher and Fuller Street. It has been relocated to the side of the property close to the rear. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, there's still an intent to provide outdoor lounge area and meeting area, pickleball courts. And then it's my understanding that these amenity features will tie into some of the beachfront amenity features that are going to be provided along this stretch of the waterfront. The proposed revised concept, as you see, maintains the existing access points as they had originally been approved. So one access point along Boucher Street and one access point along Fuller Street. Again, the intent of this application is to simply address the building heights of the 3 buildings and not address any of the other specific standards with development standards or regulations associated with the proposed development. Next slide, please. The minor variance application that's being considered by the committee today proposes a maximum building height of 15 meters, which is the equivalent to 5 stories for the apartment buildings, whereas the current permissions provide for a maximum height of 12 stories or 4 stories. I do note that this is slightly less than the maximum height provisions that are currently contained within the zoning bylaw amendment as approved by the, or excuse me, within the official plan policies of the Meaford official plan. The zoning bylaw measures height from an averaged finished grade. So what this means is that you take points along the averaged finished grade of the building and you measure those points to the height or the maximum height of the roof. That distance from the established grade to the top of the building structure is height. It is only intended at this point to address grade changes that happen or occur as you move from the front of the site to the back of the site. The front facade of the apartment building, as you see it from Boucher and Fuller Street, still continues to visually represent as a 4-story apartment building. And the 15 meters or 5-story building is intended, or it's something that is visually seen from the waterfront. And I believe the next graphic will probably help demonstrate that with a bit more clarity. Next slide, please. So what you'll see on the top of the screen is the old elevation, or the elevation that was submitted with the initial application in 2023. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the label that says Boucher Street / Fuller Street. That area in yellow was proposed to be the finished grade or the finished elevation of the site. You can see that that is a 12-meter building or the equivalent of a 4-story building. And then as you moved towards the rear of the site, the building actually did increase to 15 meters, but because of the way that the proposed grading was shown, the average grade actually read as a 4-story building. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, that's Georgian Bay or the waterfront, and you can see a label there that indicates average grade. So the green line that goes across the entire site, that was initially how we were assessing the height of the building based on the definition in the current zoning bylaw. If you scroll down or if you look down as part of the new elevation, that area of yellow has been significantly changed. So what's happening is, as touched on by staff, the intent is that the building will look or read as a walkout, if you will, or will have much more exposed foundation as you move to the rear of the site towards the waterfront. Again, the front of the building at the corner of Boucher Street and Fuller Street still remains to be seen and visually represented as a 4-story building. It's the 5-story height that happens as you move to the rear of the site. And this is as a result of some of the changes in grading or some of the changes in the proposed grading for the site as part of the established or final grade. In addition, they've also removed, as we discussed, the underground parking and replaced some of that space with future residential developments. I believe it's important to note that the elevations of the first or the old elevations and the new elevations, none of the actual elevations have changed. So the front elevation where the building or the grading starts as part of the old elevation and as part of the new elevation, both of those have the same geodetic measurement. They are both indicating a measurement of 182.95 meters above sea level. Similarly, the rear portion of the site, or the rear elevation of the building from a geodetic perspective, that has not changed either. The building had always been identified and always associated or identified with an elevation of 179.95 meters above sea level, and it continues to provide for that level or that reading of the elevation. Next slide, please. This essentially concludes my my presentation. We've had a chance to review the staff report, and we agree with the staff report with respect to the fact that the proposed minor variance meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. We believe it meets the intent of the official plan with respect to encouraging and promoting intensification and redevelopment within the urban area. We believe it meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. As noted previously, there was the OLT settlement or OLT decision that did contemplate a maximum height on the site of 15.5 meters for the hotel. We are slightly less than that, but similar in scale and size. We believe it's appropriate and desirable for the future development of the site. I believe, as outlined throughout my presentation, as well as touched on in the covering letter that was submitted with the zone change application, along with being minor in nature. This really is more of a way that something is being measured in terms of how the building is presenting. We do believe it's minor in nature. We understand the commentary with regards to the causal effect. As I noted previously at the outset of my presentation, the surface parking is a business decision that's been made by SkyDev that will likely be implemented or would be implemented regardless of how the site is being developed. We just want to reiterate that the application that is in front of the Committee of Adjustment today is simply to address building height. And we continue to work with city staff with regards to the development standards, regulations, and all of how the site's going to look and be developed ultimately through the site plan approval process. We are not proposing any changes to any other elements of the zoning regulations at this point. And that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to open it up to the committee. Are there any questions for?
Mr. Chairman, through you. So as I understand it, the site plan seems to be secondary to whatever business decision SkyDev makes with regards to the parking arrangement. Is that correct?
The site plan application is a mandatory requirement with the city. The details of the site plan application are being driven in part by the design of the building and will be driven in part by the review of the site plan application and the site plan details through that are being considered right now by staff. the parking itself is, again, we're not seeking any variances to that. The existing bylaw, the existing design standards, and the existing permissions in the city allow that surface parking to exist as proposed, regardless of whether or not it's a 4-story or a 5-story building. Skydive is committed to continuing to work with city staff to ensure that we are providing for surface landscape and surface area that results in the least amount of impact on surrounding properties, provides for appropriate screening and appropriate design considerations for that surface parking facility.
Any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your time. I'm just struggling a little bit. You're asking us just for the variance in height, but you're also adding units, right? When you add the height of the building, you're adding more units to the complex.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. The concepts that you see in front of you do provide for additional residential units. However, again, we are within the boundaries or parameters of the approved zoning bylaw and official plan for the site. We're not seeking any requests from the committee to provide for increased density on the site, increased units. Again, we're working within the parameters of the existing zoning regulations.
Just a question of clarification. In the document that you provided, as it relates to figure 2, which was the revised site plan, the wording underneath states 192 dwelling units and 289 parking spaces. Was that an inadvertent error? Because what we've seen was 183 units with 242 parking spaces.
My apologies. I believe that it is 183 units. The parking space calculation that's noted would have included the parking that was provided as part of the hotel. The site statistics that we were working with at the time was a consolidated summary of the parking spaces on site. So in fact, I believe it's only about 218 to 220 parking spaces directly or associated with the apartment buildings themselves. That number that was referenced actually captured the parking for the hotel as well.
Okay. In the original site plan, it gave landscaping a green surface percentage as 38.58%. Does that include the green space between buildings?
Mr. Chair, yes, it would. I believe it would include the green space between the buildings. The architect would have done that calculation in accordance with the direction under the zoning bylaw as to what could be counted as landscape open space and what is to be excluded as part of landscape open space.
So given the fact that the new site plan does not show a value, is there an estimate what the decrease in green space is?
I believe that the site plan that was submitted to the city does provide for a summary of what that landscape open space is. If you could give me 1 second, I'm just pulling it up right now. I believe that they are providing 35% of the landscape area, and I believe the requirement is 30%. So it's still in excess of what the minimum requirement would be.
Okay. Also with the landscaping, you've eliminated the berm. Are you going with a 5-meter green space between the parking and the property line?
That is a great question. And yes, we are. That's actually something that the landscape designers involved with the project were quite insistent about maintaining to ensure that we provided quite a hefty area to provide for mature landscaping and to provide for some kind of solidarity that could be created through landscape screening, landscape beds, vegetation, et cetera. So yes, it will be a minimum of 5 meters.
So in the middle of winter, when you have to remove all of the snow from the parking spaces and the driveways and so forth, and you only have a minimum 5-meter space, are you planning on redoing all of the shrubs and foliage every year when they get killed over the winter?
Mr. Chair, the landscape designers, I'm sure in the Southern Ontario circumstances, ensure that they're providing for species that are drought tolerant as well as salt tolerant, making sure that they're providing for landscape elements that could withstand the elements in these areas of Ontario. In addition, as part of the detailed site plan approval process, I expect the city will ask us to identify how snow is going to be stored and removed on the site. Typically, we identify larger snow storage areas, or we also identify the fact that snow will be removed from the site. In a winter like this, that's unfortunately an inevitable requirement in terms of these developments. Typically, the municipality likes to or directs any kind of snow storage or snow removal away from landscape areas for that very reason.
Yeah, and I understand that. I just, you know, to me, it's going to be a challenge. Given the fact that there is no underground parking, so everybody that lives in those buildings are going to be parking there, and it will be very difficult to remove it. Typically, when you look at a large parking lot, such as at a supermarket or whatever, there are hours during the night when it's vacant and they can adequately remove snow. I'm concerned that this is going to be a challenge, not only for SkyDev to remove it, but also for the safety and so forth of the people that are utilizing the parking spaces. I have one more question, and I apologize for hogging this a little bit. Can you describe the lighting for this parking area in terms of height, the sense of it? I understand that the light cannot exceed beyond the property line, but my concern is if I'm sitting there and there are lights like on a tennis court or whatever that are on all night for safety reasons, I don't think I would be very happy in a neighborhood like that. To me, it's like putting 100 more streetlights out there. So-
Yep. So as the revised site plan has noted that all of the amenities that are going to be provided on the site, so those outdoor congregation and meeting areas, the pickleball courts, etc., are all located along the waterfront. So they're situated quite a distance away from the residential developments or the existing uses on Boucher and Fuller Street. I also noted that there is a grade change as you move from the front to the rear of the site. So it actually acts like a bowl. So those who are on Fuller or Boucher Street, when they look out, those existing amenity features that may require lights are actually going to be lower than their driveways or their porch. In addition to that, of course, there will be lighting that will have to be provided as part of the surface parking facility. And my expectation is that the city will be quite diligent in reviewing any kind of lighting or photometric plans to ensure that they comply with the city standards with regards to light pollution, light spillage, etc. And perhaps I could defer to planning staff to speak to that in a bit more detail. But again, that would be my expectation. That's something that would have to be resolved and satisfied to the city as part of the detailed site plan review.
Would planning staff like to comment?
Mr. Chair, what would you like me to specifically comment on? It is under review. It's something we review for every development. We always make sure that the lighting is appropriate for the scale that is required. We don't want it lit up like it's a ball diamond. That's not the intention, for sure.
Leave it at that. Are there any other questions from committee members? Fair enough. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. I'm going to open it up to the public now. I'd like to make a few comments before I open it up. First of all, I want to give everybody that wishes to speak an opportunity, including those that may be on the Zoom call. And for all of those that took the opportunity to write in to the committee members, I assure you, committee members have read each and every one of those letters. The committee has no legal standing to discuss any changes that were approved by council from the original Ontario Land Tribunal decision. So, and the subsequent bylaw. So please, if you're going to make comments, relate it to specifically this variance request. I would ask that if you've submitted a letter, it really doesn't help just to stand there and read it again. We've already read it once. And to save time, because there are a lot of people in the room, if the comment that you want to make has already been addressed or spoken, we don't need it. This isn't a case of largest number of votes wins. So we are listening to each and every one of the comments. And finally, I'd ask you make your comments concise and in a respectful tone. And with that, I'll open it up to the public. If you wish to speak, would you please raise your hand? I will acknowledge you. Can you go to the podium and state your name for the records, please? This gentleman first.
Great. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Neil Haggart. I have a short handout just to give each of you. So members of the committee, I've been a resident of Meaford for over 25 years. And I also have the privilege of representing Imagine Meaford, which, as I imagine you know, is a resident group representing over 100 local residents. In the first page that I've handed out, it's actually a section from D5, the height component of the official plan. It's very clear just just when I look at section 5, D5 height B, unless otherwise specified, the maximum height of buildings and structures shall be generally restricted to the maximum 15.5. In this instance, we know that there's a specific 12 meter. The official plan goes on to be very clear. Proposals that require an increase in height shall do so through a site-specific amendment to the zoning bylaw. So our professional planning consultant and residents actually have a very different interpretation than the one we've heard today on height and believe it should be going through a council process. As you can imagine, language is very important. And the official plan, I believe, or we believe, needs to be read as a mandatory requirement. Otherwise, the word may would have been used as opposed to shall. So continuing on the language, the official plan goes on to say that proposals shall demonstrate conformity to the following. The proposed development shall be designed to be compatible with surrounding land uses. An appropriate transition to nearby development shall be incorporated. I would ask you to turn to page 4, which is actually the original Ontario Land Tribunal site plan. This is what the last time the residents saw this. And you'll see that there's townhomes facing the public streets. On the next page, page 5, you'll see the very large surface parking lot, which we've all been talking about. The previous approval proposed townhomes. It's our submission that a 5-meter landscape berm along 2 public streets outlined in the planning staff report does not create a compatible streetscape as required by the official plan. Townhomes along both public streets, as originally approved, created that appropriate height transition, as again required by the official plan. A large surface parking lot cannot simply achieve this objective. If you go to page 3, you'll see the official plan's special policies for this area. And these were in place when SkyDev purchased the property. And they clearly state the development will minimize the amount of parking used for parking cars. So the revised SkyDev site plan increases surface parking by about 50%, clearly contravening this official plan policy. So the proposal in front of the committee members today clearly impacts 3 official plan policies and does not satisfy the Planning Act test of the general intent and purpose of the official plan must be maintained. There's a reason why the official plan mandates the zoning bylaw variance, because it's a more transparent process that allows for a fulsome understanding of all the impacts. Lots of discussions today about the causal effects of this one simple decision. By admission today in the discussion and in the report, the site plan continues to be under review. Lots of other issues going on. How can anyone be asked to make an informed decision without an informed site plan, a final site plan approval? My final point would be a 20% increase, which is what's being requested today, is not minor in nature. It contravenes the official plan, and it's also offsite with the Meaford zoning bylaw, which for that L shape along the two public streets specifically permits just townhomes and a temporary sales office, not a large surface parking lot. It's our submission that the variance is not desirable and respectfully does not meet the Planning Act test and should be refused. Thank you very much.
Yes.
You're a hard act to follow. Good afternoon, everybody. Before I go through my points, I just want to make one comment. More to this. Oh, Therese Dubois. And I'm a resident of Meaford. You know, I'm sitting here listening to what's going on, especially with the individual from Skydev. And it's kind of like the frog in the water, where, you know, people didn't want this to start with. And the official plan of Meaford was to keep our land that was on the water for the town and tourism. And the way Skydev got around it was to say, we'll put in a hotel. And now, and they started with little, you know, nice little townhouses and underground parking. And now all of a sudden it's going to be concrete buildings with a concrete parking lot. So from there, I just want to say, and you do have to talk about the parking lot. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we'll just talk about the building height, but it affects everything. So today's decision or this conversation is more about, or not just about adding parking or adding building height. It's about responsibility. It's about precedent, and it's about whether our waterfront policies mean anything at all here in Meaford. Skydev submitted a proposal that included underground parking and meaningful green space. Those elements were central to making an oversized waterfront condominium even marginally acceptable to the residents. If the land cannot support underground parking, that is not our failure. It is the failure of the developer to conduct proper due diligence for submitting their plan. Developers assume risk. That is the nature of development. So we should not be asked to absorb that risk on their behalf by sacrificing green space and increasing building height. On July 13, 2022, Skydev filed a notice of appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal when a municipal deadline was missed. They acted immediately. They relied on strict procedural rights. They leveraged the system to force their proposal forward. Now, when their own assumptions about the site prove flawed, they're asking for flexibility. We have to ask, was that flexibility when the municipality missed a deadline? Where was that flexibility for residents who opposed the scale of this project from the beginning? If timelines and technicalities mattered then, responsibility must matter now. This is a violation of Meaford's own policies. Our official plan is not optional. B154 guiding principles state that the waterfront development must protect the environment, promote a healthy waterfront, serve as a focal open space area. Replacing green space with surface parking directly contradicts all three. Special policy B1812 requires that development be compatible with surrounding residential uses, provide pedestrian linkages and public space, minimize space used for parking. This amendment does the opposite. It maximizes parking. It eliminates open space. It eliminates green space. If this is approved, You're not refining the project, you're undermining our own planning framework. And if policies can be set aside when inconvenient, then they're not policies, they're suggestions. This neighborhood will lose all meaningful green space. Children who currently play in a safe, low-traffic area will be surrounded by vehicles. Residents and pedestrians will face increased height, increased shadowing, and increased visual obstruction on the waterfront. Replacing committed green space with a large surface parking lot will fundamentally transform the waterfront from a pedestrian-oriented public realm into a vehicle-dominated space, permanently diminishing its visual quality and character. This was already a divisive proposal. Increasing height and removing green space makes it materially worse. This is not a minor amendment. This is a fundamental change in character. It removes a walkable waterfront. It's a space where green and open views matter. This is a residential neighborhood, not a parking-dominated commercial zone. There are alternatives. If parking is required, SkyDev can reduce the floor of units, reconfigure the building footprint, incorporate structured or carport-style parking beneath the building. What they should not be permitted to do is to preserve maximum unit count while transferring the consequences to the public realm. Profit margin is not a planning principle. Public interest is. If this amendment is approved, the message to future developers is clear. Promise green space to gain approval, revise later when complications arise, and then ask to adjust. That's not responsible governance. And once waterfront green space is converted to asphalt, it will never come back. The residents of Meaford have entrusted the planning people in our city, the councillors in our city or town, of upholding our official plan and waterfront policies. Those policies were created through public process and represent the will of the broader community. They should not be set aside to resolve a developer's design problem. This is not about being anti-development. This is about holding a developer to the plan they use to secure approval. It's about maintaining the integrity of the official plan. And it's about ensuring that the community does not pay for a developer's miscalculation. Council or the planning committee or the planning department is not obligated to solve SkyDev's design problem. Their obligation is to the long-term health of Meaford's waterfront and to the residents who trusted that your policies would be upheld. Do not trade green space for parking. Do not trade policy for convenience, and do not set a precedent that commitments on our waterfront are negotiable. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, members of the committee and the public. My name is Danielle Hessel, and I live at 207 Boucher Street East. This is directly across from the SkyDev Aspen Shores development. I'm here to speak in opposition of the minor variance application A10-2025. I stand here today as a mother, as a neighbor, and as a friend. This development has major implications on my family's quality of life and our future here in Meaford. But it isn't just my family that will be impacted by this development of this magnitude. It will be the entire community. SkyDev is a big corporation seeking to circumvent the originally approved OLT plan by asking for what they call a minor variance. I am here today to formally oppose this application. There are many reasons this application should be denied, and a formal rezoning process should be undertaken instead. The minor application is not minor at all. Skydev is seeking to add an additional 3,806.5 meters squared, which is the equivalent to 40,972.8 squared feet. I'm no math expert, but that number is not minor. The four tests of the minor variance are clearly not met here. Point number one, this is a breach of the OLT settlement, which is OLT 22-004254, which states the current zoning for this property was established by a tribunal order. The community and the municipality agreed to a compromise, which was 5 stories for a hotel, but a strict cap of 4 stories or 12 meters max for the apartment buildings to protect the waterfront character. By asking for a 5th story now through a minor variance, the developer is seeking to circumvent the terms of a legal settlement. In planning law, a variance cannot be considered minor if it reverses the very condition that made the project acceptable to the community and the tribunal in the first place. Point 2, there is a violation of the official plan section D5. Meaford's official plan section D5 states that new development must be compatible in terms of built form with the character, size, and massing of adjacent buildings. As seen in the photo that I handed out, 4 stories is a massive leap for this neighborhood. Adding a 5th floor and an increase of over 40,000 square feet fails the compatibility test and represents a significant impact on the landscape of our tranquil harbor neighborhood. It also states in the official plan for special policy area number 1 that the development must provide public pedestrian space and access to the waterfront and will minimize the amount of space used for vehicular parking. Taking from the site plan review application, this variance seeks the very opposite of that. Point number 3, there is an environmental impact of surface parking. The request to remove the underground parking in favor of surface parking is equally problematic. Official Plan Section B 1.6 requires us to protect the ecological health of our water. Surface parking significantly increases impervious surfaces, leading to more contaminated stormwater runoff into the Big Head River and Georgian Bay. This fails the test of being desirable and appropriate development of the land. We should be moving parking underground to preserve our green space, not paving over the waterfront. I think Joni Mitchell said it best. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. In Appendix G of the Geotechnical hydroelectrological, I don't know how to say that exactly under this pressure, under the pre-consult review for the multi-residential / commercial development dated January 19th of 2021, the Grace Sabo Conservation Authority stated, this on page 71, section 2.2, and I quote, "The proposed development will significantly increase impervious areas on the subject property and result in increased storm water runoff. It is recommended that the subject site provide a high level of water quality treatment for stormwater runoff while maximizing the extent of vegetative and pervious surfaces on the property." In part 4 on page 72, it states that Stormwater Management Plan, or SWMP, is required for their proposed development, given that the development will outlet to Georgian Bay. A minimum enhanced level of water quality protection should be provided, and it is recommended that the stormwater design incorporates thermal mitigation measures. This plan will need to be completed to the satisfaction of the Grace Sabo Conservation Authority and the municipality of Meaford. A permit is required from the GSCA prior to any development and/or site altercations. So I ask the committee, has an updated stormwater management plan and Grace Sabo Conservation Authority permit been submitted with the minor variance with its newly designed sea of impervious asphalt? Furthermore, under the urban design report, final is dated September 22nd of 2023, page 9, section 3.1, design and objectives states, the vision for the redevelopment of the site is to create a high-quality mixed-use development that serves as a positive addition to the waterfront area, providing enhanced open spaces, promoting walkability, ensuring safe and well-used spaces and achieving compatibility with the surrounding residential uses. Page 11, section 4.1, the development overview, paragraph 4 states the proposed development also pays close attention to its interface with adjoining streets and neighboring low-rise residential properties. Naturalized planting buffers on berms and a continuous street wall of dense vegetation and trees help define the character of the surrounding streetscapes. Removing the berm in place of parking spaces is a direct conflict with what has already originally agreed upon. To put a bit of perspective on this, our grocery store has roughly 150 to 175 parking spaces. This application seeks to have well over 200 impervious surface parking spaces. In reading through the most recent staff recommendation, I noticed there are also some significant differences in what was submitted on behalf of SkyDev from the GSP group versus what the town says SkyDev is asking for. GSP stated in its group commentary that there will be 192 dwelling units and 269 total parking spaces, but yet the staff recommendation states 183 units and 242 parking spaces. And that does not include the hotel. Just so you know, I counted them on their picture. So which is it? There's only 12 bicycle parking spaces allotted. I failed to see how the developer is in this for good growth for Meaford and for mitigating risks to public safety. The minor variance application is a far cry from the original proposal listed on the Meaford Planning website, which was adopted through the OLT settlement, OLT 22-004254. We, as community members, as neighbors, and as friends, must stand up in the face of big growth for big profit builders. And we must protect our community from improper deviations of process, or we seriously run the risk of setting an unwelcome precedent for our community in the future. Being meticulous now can save us future headaches. Regardless of the number of rental units, the tax revenue to the municipality for the site will remain the same, but our quiet neighborhood will bear the burden of increased density, traffic, pollutants, and the potential for crime. So I ask you, will you do what is right for the community and strike down this application? In summary, I believe this application fails all 4 tests for a minor variance. It is not minor. It adds an entire story to each building and changes the entire parking strategy, thus affecting stormwater management and increasing density. It is not desirable. It increases asphalt, noise, and light pollution. I'm getting there. And increases the heat island effect in a highly sensitive harbor front zone, as well as all the safety ramifications to our neighborhood. It fails the intent of the bylaw, which was specifically amended by the OLT to prevent this level of density and impervious blanketing of asphalt. It fails the intent of the official plan regarding compatibility and environmental protection. I respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application and require the developer to go through the full zoning bylaw amendment process if they wish to change these settled rules. Why don't we tell SkyDev to take it back to the OLT if they so wish? This minor variance is not minor at all and should be subjected to the proper procedures and have updated documents like an updated stormwater management report, Gray Sabo Conservation Authority permit, a traffic impact study, and functional service reports that reflect these changes as set out per our Meaford engineering standards. Thank you all for your time today. Your opposition to this application is greatly appreciated.
I've got a question for Paul. This is a good time to ask him. Wait for a few.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Al Workman. I'm a resident of Meaford. I brought some notes with me, but virtually everything here has been covered already. So I'm going to reserve my comments to one point that was made earlier. And that's simply that regardless of the magnitude of a variance, you certainly can't divorce the variance from the collateral effects of that variance. So what I would like to dispute is the claim that the recreational benefits of this development are being maintained. Yes, there's a small corner up in the northeast part of the property, which is being maintained for socializing, and there was a claim that the pickleball courts are going to be moved up there. I'm not quite certain that the plan shows that, but irrespective, there's somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 square meters of recreational area that's being eliminated for parking. And that means that the dog run is gone. The major area of the pickleball courts is gone. The socializing area is gone. Children's play area is gone, and all to be replaced by parking. So I think that the claim that the recreational facilities associated with this housing development are being maintained is false. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Barch, and I'm living at the Boucher Street, 217. There is few things which I don't like it. The SkyDev, first thing, they think we are full. What they gonna do? They want to go all around back door to go back what they want. It's basically is the parking spot increase. It will be disaster for that neighborhood. Why? First, with the big parking lot, there is big crime in the drugs dealing. It's all around the Ontario. We have I think in Meaford and everywhere enough drug problems. We don't want to create another drug dealing spots. Okay, that's my concern. I'm living right across, like very close to it. The other one is traffic. If there will be no parking spot enough, the traffic gonna be everywhere. The car is gonna be blocked on the road, that we said. The third things, there will be no trees. Don't think there will be any trees around the parking lot, because with the snow, if anybody is in the snow removal business, you know, the tree, when you push the snow, the tree snapped or ripped off with the roots. There is no chance with the snow what we have it to still have the green space. We only can have a grass. So that's, and the sizes. You mentioned the parking lot is 100, it's the store it's 100, yeah, I counted. It's about 160. The in downtown parking spot beside the Meaford Hall is a 70 spots, and the Home Depot in Collingwood is little bit over 300 spots. So you see that size. What is the size of the parking spot? And it's all minor variances. It's all about the parking spot. They never mention anything about the parking spots because they know they have to just go all around things because, you know, nobody likes it. So I opposed. Thank you very much.
Sir, I have one individual online first, if I may. Judy? Can you hear me, Judy? Judy, are you on mute by any chance? She should be there, and quite honestly, I have read her letter as well. So there was a gentleman in the back, please. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, board, and my neighbors. My name's Hugh Grafton. I live right across the street from this proposed development. I stood in front of the the board or the committee of adjustment about 10 years ago, asking for a 20 by 20 one-story addition to my shop, and I was turned down flat. Turned down flat. It didn't fit with the community. It was too large. It was completely out of scale with everything. And now we're watching the Skydev move in, and what they're asking, if they want one floor added to each building, I did the math, there's about 15 to 18 units per floor. They're asking between 45 and 54 extra units. Nobody's mentioning all these extra units. We're talking 54 extra units, which means more parking spaces are needed, which means where is the stormwater management plan here? All I see is parking area. We asked Skydev about the stormwater management plan, and what we were told, we'll let it pond in the parking lots. Pond in the parking lots? Like, what kind of a plan is that? And the stormwater management plan, this all has to do with the parking lots and the increased density on the thing. Where's all that water going to? Are they gonna pump it up the hill, or are they gonna let it run into Georgian Bay? The oil, the rubber, all the contaminants from all that parking area is all gonna end up in Georgian Bay. Well, there's a good point. I completely oppose this. I oppose the entire Skydev thing, but them asking to put in effect 54 more units, which is almost another building. They're trying to slide a fourth building in place without actually asking for permission or putting it on the plan. That's all I'd like to say.
Okay, Mr. Grafton, just
Yep,
for your own,
sure.
the revised one is an additional 30 units.
Is what they're
30
claiming?
units,
Okay,
okay?
I did the
that's-
math and I see
yeah.
15
And-
units per floor per
I
building.
know, but it's not every floor that gets another
Okay.
unit. It's actually 30.
They're saying 30 more units.
30 more units and the associated parking that goes with that.
Right.
With respect to stormwater, I asked the question previously.
You did, yes, very good.
And it will be part of the final site approval process. So they will never get full approval until that has been completed and it has been reviewed by Grace Obel as well, so that they're satisfied.
you. Mr. Chairman, your questions to that lady were completely on point. Exactly. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Judy. Are you online now? Okay, there is one other gentleman that would like to speak, so. Oh, sorry, I saw the gentleman's hand behind you.
Sorry, I'll be really short. I wasn't really expecting to talk, but I have a question. I'm Linnea Nelson and I live around the corner from this. I'm just wondering, okay, so you answered it, part of it is that it's 30 more units in total. And that brings it up from 183 to,
Goes from 153 to 183.
oh, okay. And then there's 120 parking spaces.
And they're going from, the original was 232 parking spaces, 98 of which were outside
Mhm.
to 242 parking spaces.
Oh, okay, okay, and the 183. So those are the numbers, assuming the extra units have been
Yes,
put in.
but that does not include any of the parking spaces associated
For the
with
hotel, right, okay. So my question is, just as a former gentleman who wanted to build his other building 2 feet taller, and you wondered what the purpose of that was. And so I'm assuming that you're granting the variance or not based on what the variance is and what the purpose of the variance is. So if the purpose of the variance is to add height, but it's actually for the purpose of adding units, then my question is, are you voting for, let's say you approve the height, is that with the assumption that you are also approving the units? Or can you approve the height on the basis of, as she said, it's just height, and that's the only thing we're asking for, that you could say, yeah, you can have that height, but the question of whether you're going to use that first floor for parking or for units would be another question that would ask for another, that would be a different question and possibly for a different level of people making that decision.
So what comes before this committee is minor variances as determined by the planning department when they review the application and they work with them and they look at the 4 tests of minor variance. They then present that to the committee, and it is up to the committee to review the application, to listen to what the public has to say, to listen to what we personally think, and decide whether it is right for the community, or whether it is a variance that we cannot support for any particular reason. So the question is, you know, we granted a variance for the gentleman previously that wanted a garage to go 2 feet high. That would be a minor variance as it related to the neighbors and the community that he is in.
Okay.
If he'd asked for a 5-story AD unit,
yeah,
it wouldn't have come up before this.
My point there was that this whole discussion, there's been this kind of disconnect between whether you're looking at an extra some meters or whether you're looking at an extra 30 some parking spaces, basically, and the elimination of all the parking spaces that were going to be underneath the buildings. And so it's not just the height, it's the height and the addition of units and the elimination of under the building parking. And so is that as a package deal, what you are here to decide on or not?
The variance is specifically related to the height.
But not related to the use of the height.
That's what
Is that
they are
right?
asking for, but it is up to the committee then to look at what's effectively changing, and we would make our decision based on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can we try?
Let's
One more
this
time?
again. Yes, she says she's on her phone and on her computer, so.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can now. Thank you, Judy.
Sorry, guys. Let me hang up the phone then too, so I'm not duplicating. Maybe I'm on the phone. Okay, sorry, everyone. I did have, we read it's unfortunate that we weren't able to present with the PowerPoint presentation that we wanted to, and everybody else can. And I did have quite a lengthy response after reading everything, respecting that there was a 14-page report by the planning department and a 9-page report by GSP. And at 4:30 Friday afternoon, we were left a few days just to figure out and consult with our own experts on everything. So I just wanted to start with listening to that. I do not understand how this is a business decision for Skydive on the parking, regardless, when it has to follow the OP. The OP says that it has to limit the surface parking space. And I do not understand GSP, where they said it was 38% green space, and now it's still 3% difference. I don't think so. But anyways, I'll go through the things that I'm hoping I'm not replicating. We took a look at on Google, we took a look at the size, and we calculated out of 2.6 hectares of this property that approximately half of this property would now be becoming paved. And when you take into the consideration of all the buildings, there's virtually no green space left on this property, which was to be an urban area waterfront gateway and focal open space area. So I wanted to go over the test because I was, researching what is a minor variance? Like, the variance must be minor. What is considered to be minor? And one of the things that stuck out with me was the impact on the neighbors. A variance is often deemed minor if it does not create significant adverse effects on neighboring properties. And the municipal staff report did not address what impact this variance would have on the neighbors. And if I can quote the staff report and quote,
staff recognize that this minor variance will have an impact on the parking areas, unquote. So staff is acknowledging the impact on the parking, but completely fails to acknowledge the negative impact that this minor variance with the 300-car outdoor parking will have on the immediate neighbors in the neighborhood. Also in the staff report, in reading it, they quoted that the maximum height variance shall only be to the rear portion of the building. The staff report, to me, felt like it completely overlooked the fact that the maximum height being proposed on both sides, you will see it visually from Fuller and Boucher Street. And GSP showed that. And I think Danielle also has a photo of that. And you can see that the majority of the elevation is changing on the bottom, and the terrace got removed on the back. So this isn't just the back portion. It is the full 3 walls that we're seeing that's visual. And also on the site plan, if we can also show that one, Danielle, please, because we weren't allowed PowerPoint. Thank you, Danielle, for being my PowerPoint. The site plan, as you can see, very visual, this 5 stories from both Fuller and Boucher. So this is not just the rear of the building. And so what we end up is you remove the back terrace, the buildings become completely unappealing. It's uncharacteristic of the neighborhood. With the 3 big box looking 5-story buildings, it's going to negatively change aesthetic of our waterfront from both the rear and the side views. So both Fuller and Boucher Streets are considered the urban waterfront area, which was to serve as a gateway and focal open space. I wanted to note, and I'm just a few things on the staff report. I want to quote, within settlement areas, appropriate development standards are to be promoted, which facilitate intensification, redevelopment, and compact form, while avoiding or mitigating risk to public health and safety. I want to repeat that, while avoiding or mitigating risk to public health and safety. So the staff report responds. It says this minor variance application will support residential growth and development within the settlement, and it carries on. However, the staff report completely disregards addressing while avoiding or mitigating risk to public health and safety. We have a serious concern with the stormwater management, as you heard, air quality, but most importantly, our safety. And in terms of the neighboring waterfront, if I can remind you that SkyDust planner GSP noted that the site gently slopes towards the Georgian Bay. So what kind of pollutants from this outdoor parking lot will now be flowing into the Georgian Bay? So in our opinion, test 1 doesn't pass. Test 2, the variance must be desirable for the appropriate development or use of land. And so, again, what is considered as a definition of desirable pertaining to a minor variance? And what I found that it said, the project must improve sensibly, use the land without creating negative effects. So that's the definition of what's desirable. So what improvement would a 300-car parking lot offer to the neighborhood and to our community? And I'd like to point out SkyDust's initial focus on the use of land. Their original intent on the use of land when they sought their OLT approval and received approval, and if I can quote what the representative at the time said, it said, it will permit development that includes well-designed, built form complemented by landscape yards and amenity spaces that will contribute to a sense of place, unquote. The removal of the green space, the increase in the height through adjusting the grade facing directly onto Boucher and Fuller Street, not just the rear, and a massive outdoor parking lot that will take up half of this development land will no longer be complemented by what they received approval on, landscape yards and amenity spaces, and will no longer contribute to a sense of space or place. On page 10, staff actually wrote that they do not agree with the planning commentary analysis of test 3 provided by SkyDev desirability. And just to note, their test 3 is actually our test 2 on desirability. So to quote the staff again, if I can, the staff note that the focus on desirability is expected to be limited only to the variance itself of the change in height, and we'll unquote there. So however, and this was already brought up, we cannot dismiss the staff report that advises us that while the variance will have a causal impact on the parking layout, green space and landscape, and contribute to the loss of the berm from the previous proposal, it is staff's opinion that the impact of the changes are best mitigated through the site plan approval submission process. So as you already said, the variance, I thought, what is causal impact? Like, what does that mean? And, and try and understand that better. It means that one impact directly does influence the other. So in this case, the variance itself will directly influence the outdoor parking. So it has to be part of the variance decision. I don't know how it can be even thought to be excluded. And I don't understand how a site plan approval resubmission would guarantee that the original berm and green space will be kept and guarantee that the outdoor parking would in fact be minimized as it should be under the official plan when they are increasing, up to 279 units and 242 parking places. It's just unrealistic. I don't see it. I just don't see it. And I'd also like to note that the reason the SkyDev provided as part of the minor variance, and what they had in here is, in their quote, to make the rental project financially viable. In other words, the reason is to save costs. And it's my understanding that applying for a minor variance is not simply a way to save costs. A minor variance is a structured legal process designed to handle situations where a project which is reasonable but does not fully fit the zoning rules as written. And a little side note, speaking of financial obligations, it was in May 2024 that the holding provision was removed with the owner, providing comprehensive servicing analysis to address the design, allocation, construction timing, and financing, and approvals necessary to provide the adequate municipal services to the subject land. I think it would be prudent for our municipality, given the current economic housing conditions and period of time that has lapsed since May 2024, to consider receiving a current status as to SkyDev's financing on this project. This minor variance application is purely for SkyDev to save costs by trying to circumvent the proper process in the hopes that they can fast track these changes. So not only does the minor variance fail test 2, desirability, based on the reason for the minor variance, this application should be denied. And Danielle, since we don't have a slideshow, I just wanted to show what the desirability the end result will be. I want to note that this photo that I found, I counted the cars, it's 150 cars, and they're already approved for 146. So that I don't feel is desirable. I'm going to say that fails test 2. And then, we can go to the official plan. I can repeat all of that, but I think we know already from Imagine Meaford and several other people that under the official plan, it's supposed to promote a healthy waterfront. I don't know how a large parking lot protects the environment, how it's supposed to benefit current and future generations, and nor does it promote a healthy waterfront with the increase in stormwater runoff, contaminants, increasing both pollution and flood risk. Also, it's supposed to be the open gateway as a focal space, and that's gone out the window. And we mentioned that it's not compatible, so I won't get into that length. But again, just to reinforce that the minimum land use for surface parking, we estimated that it's going to be half of the site now. So I don't know how a business decision could push that through. So in our opinion, it does not pass test number 3. Test number 4 is the zoning bylaw, and both 60-2009, it permits a maximum height of 12 meters and not more than 4 stories. And it does not conform to bylaw 2022-84, which was a bylaw that was amended to the zoning bylaw 6209 under the zoning standards and special provisions provided by the OLT, which clearly indicated that the building apartment is to be 12 meters, not more than 4 stories, and approved for underground parking. So again, I don't know how a business decision can just wipe all that out. With respect to the increase in height, both staff and SkyDev's planner GSP reports to me are false. in that it's not only in the rear of the building, it becomes everywhere. And GSP themselves acknowledges in their report, and I'll quote, with the exception of maximum building height, quote, the revised development plan complies with all the zoning. So in other words, the maximum building height does not comply with all the zoning regulations. They're saying it themselves. It does not comply to all the zoning regulations. And it's been said, and I'll repeat it, that the municipality will gain tax benefits of the site regardless of what is built in the long term. But we will fall short of the true community benefit this waterfront site should achieve. We will, without a doubt. And I respect our staff and the hard work that they do. I feel bad for them because it's not an easy situation that they're in. However, some of the staff decisions to date on the site is exactly why SkyDiff today is being able to quickly pivot to rentals from the OLT approved 2022 orders. They gave them a new site that allowed them to pivot to rentals, but apparently that's just not good enough for SkyDev. And also staff's past decision and also providing to SkyDev the opportunity to now expand the outdoor parking lot. And how was that achieved? The staff recommended giving up 5% of our legislative parks of our community parklands for a mere $30,000. Staff felt the site was just too small for the parklands. This is the community parklands. Note that everything prior to this was all private. There was no community integration into the neighborhood. I calculated out what the 5% would have been. It would have been 14,000 square feet, which is equivalent to 109 parking spaces. So I trust you understand why, as neighbors, we have serious concerns with staff suggesting that the impact of these changes can be mitigated through the site plan approval submission when we don't even know what this would be. We have no idea what it would be. And I appreciate everybody just wants to get this project done with. And based on all the facts presented today to the Committee of Adjustments, your decision for SkyDev and for any future building on this project as a whole, it's just business to them. It impacts their project's bottom line, and it's nothing but another line item on their financial statements. Whereas your decision today goes deeper than a line item on our financial statement. Your decision will directly impact our health, our safety, our children's future, and our quality of life. I won't do my recap. That should cut off some time. I also wanted to make a note that SkyDev has other options. They, in fact, have 2 approved options that they could work with. The first one was the OLT approved option in 2022 that actually had 1 mid-rise 4-story building with underground parking. So it was viable to build a rental with underground parking. And I also want to note that I provided to SkyDev and to our municipality other examples of builders building rentals with underground parking. And there's nothing stopping SkyDev for using the 2024 approvals to flip over to rentals. There's nothing stopping them with the underground parking. Just if they want to get the project out of the ground, they should be able to. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Absolutely, again.
Hi, my name is Kim Reed. I live at St. Vincent and Bridge Street. I'm not looking forward to the traffic that's coming. But in this old elevation, I don't understand what's going on here. They've just moved this line back and they've added apartments on this floor. Why are they doing that? My understanding is that they couldn't do the underground parking because of water tables.
That's never been discussed or never.
Okay,
been
so it was
disclosed.
just things that are going on. So why are they abandoning the underground parking?
They have stated that it's to make the project financially viable. Was one of the statements that they made. That's, I can only repeat what was stated. Yes, please. We need to move this.
My name's Alan Reed. I live in Meaford. My concern is this. We're in this mess because of procedural outgaming by SkyDev over council. The council didn't respond in
Please, sir,
time.
would you be respectful to the council?
I am being respectful for the council, but that's what happened. You described it earlier. We didn't respond. We, meaning the council, didn't respond. They went to the tribunal. Correct?
That is correct.
Right. So they've played the game, okay, of getting approvals better than we have. If we go ahead now and approve a variance for a height variance, dependent upon some kind of site metric or review later, I'm worried that they're going to do the game better than we did. And I'm concerned that the snowball, which is what this problem will become, will get bigger with time or with bigger snow. So I think that to say that we'll deal with the parking later, that worries me a lot. What I'm trying to say, council, is do think about the snowball effect of what we're getting into. It's that simple. With respect. Thank you.
Yeah, you had one question?
Mr. Chair, if I may, a question for planning people. Whether or not this minor variance gets approved, SkyDev can still, if they choose, put asphalt down to the extent as long as they leave 30% green space. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I don't know that it's an automatic, you get it, you can change to this in 30% green space. I think we're looking at all of the aspects as part of the site plan, including what the urban design report requires or proposed are the lighting standards, the landscaping, the walkway, all of those things. So we're looking at it as a whole package. But I think to your point, I think is that they could change to surface parking without going to council approval. It's part of a site plan approval, which is internal to staff.
So in a worst case scenario, they could say, we've got these units, well, we have enough parking, we'll give each unit, for instance, 2 parking spots. And because we now, have that space available to do it, that is a possibility, is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's certainly a possibility. We are asking people to not be overparked so that we don't contribute to excess parking. We want them to be appropriately parked. And so there are standards, just like if somebody wanted to pave their entire front or they wanted to put in enough space for their own home to have, 20 spaces or something.
I didn't know if the 30% was a sacrosanct number. As long as you have 30% green, you can do what you want.
So I'm going to look to Helena. I don't recall that number. Maybe it is in there. In this case, I will say that it is currently 35 is what's proposed. And to just clarify that piece, because the question was raised, like, how could it be 35 if it was 38 before? I believe it's because the hotel is no longer part of the application. So it is quite a bit more. I would say it had less landscaping and it was more surface parking already. So by taking it out, that probably shifts the percentage somewhat. Especially when you look at it, it does look like it's about 35% is green space. It may be a significant difference from before, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that number is incorrect. I haven't measured it myself, but it is on their application.
Thank you.
Any other? Jamie, can you please provide us with the suggested decision and conditions of approval?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment approve minor variance A10-2025 for the lands at 226 Boucher Street East, providing relief from zoning bylaw for the following: to permit a maximum height of 15 meters and not more than 5 stories for the apartment buildings, where section 9.292.2 subsection 3CII of zoning bylaw 60/2009 permits a maximum height of 12 meters and not more than 4 stories, subject to the following conditions: that the proposed development shall occur substantially in accordance with the elevation drawings provided with minor variance application A10-2025 and the attached Schedule B, C, and Schedule D. Two, that the maximum height variance shall only be for the rear portion of the building as shown in drawings attached as Schedule B and C. In all other areas, the provision of the zoning bylaw 60-2009 shall apply. And three, that this approval shall only take effect where final site plan approval of site plan application SP 03-2023 is granted to the satisfaction of the municipality of Meaford, and that a site plan agreement has been registered on title.
Any comments, questions?
Is that a yes or a no? Is the recommendation a yes or a no? I didn't follow it fully. I'm sorry to ask.
The recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment approve the variance request.
Now we can disrespect.
Any further comments, questions? May I have a motion for that? Seeing as no one will make a motion, do we have an amended or revised motion present?
I'm not at the moment.
Then I, as chair, will make a motion, which technically I'm not supposed to do. But I move that the Committee of Adjustment reject the variance. Is any? Will anyone second? I'll second. Thanks. All in favor? Yes. All right. That officially concludes the public portion. So thank you for all your comments. You've done the right thing, man. I know.
Okay. So, reason for refusal, the desire to increase rental units has resulted in the elimination of underground parking to be replaced with replaced with above ground on-site parking. With the subsequent removal of significant green space, this situation is not compatible with the surrounding residential uses and streetscapes. And then we have reasons that it does not meet the 4 tests.
Meet the,
The 4 tests, so.
Of a minor variance.
yeah. That's sufficient?
Say, you guys agree, like,
Yeah.
it's on you guys to decide.
Oh, yeah, put it this way. There's no doubt that if it was purely fixing the building, everybody would have, it would have been out here in 5 minutes. But because you've got this, everyone doesn't want to hear the word causal, but that's really what it is that, what do you do about it? Because I realized that they can decide not to, do their expansion and still pave Paradise. They can still do that. But, I guess in part, it's on us to sort of say, we just don't like this.
And just for a point of clarification, we're still in the meeting, like we haven't adjourned yet. So if we could just finish just so in case you don't realize it's still being broadcast.
That's fine. I wasn't gonna let people leave it. We justified the reasons. So unless there's anything else to be added to the reason for refusal.
Fine with that.
All right, the next meeting is scheduled for March 25th. Do we have files at this time?
Yes, we do.
All right. Then we will see you all on March the 25th, and this meeting is now officially closed. Thank you.